smartest guys around are about to break it down like they've won the game a million times.
Well, actually, they didn't really win the game at all.
Survivor know it all. Survivor know it all. Stephen without it down. Got the game on figured out. They know it all.
Yeah, that's right. The Survivor Know-It-Alls are back here tonight to talk about the seventh week here of Survivor. Although I'm being told it's episode number 8 after our double episode last week. Here I am with a man who tried to get me to sit out of this one for Rice. Wouldn't do it. Here's Stephen Fishbach. Stephen, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Rob? I'm very well.
Stephen, you want to weigh in on the debate of what are we calling the podcast this week? Is this officially our episode 8 recap?
Oh, God,
Dalton had the official word and said it last week. That was not one episode that was 2 hours. It was actually episode 6 and episode 7.
So that was 2 episodes last week.
2 episodes.
So no one was eliminated in episode 6.
Just like last season. Yeah.
Wow. Now I'm angry to have
Make
watched
the
a whole
call,
episode
Steven.
of Survivor.
I feel like I feel like that you are somebody who would be able to make.
I'm going to follow Dalton. Whatever Dalton says, I don't want to get on Dalton's bad side.
Welcome to the episode 8 recap, everybody.
Memes.
Episode 8 recap of Survivor 42. And there were a lot of would you say homages to season 41 of Survivor?
That's a very nice way.
Yeah, a love letter to season 41 of Survivor.
It does feel like we smashed an hourglass and now are repeating history to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then doing all of the same things all over again. So this was but this was a rehash of the episode where Tiffany went home in Survivor 41. I think that the final 11 was a little more hectic in Survivor 41 than it was in Survivor 42.
I do think so. I think overall I'm enjoying the season more. Like there's less focus on advantages.
Yeah.
And I do sort of feel like, in a time loop movie where, you get to do it the second time and you like improve things in small ways, like Edge of Tomorrow, great Tom Cruise movie. I did think there was more fun chaos. Like there was more like tribal tension in the last one. And this sort of like big, behemoth alliance is kind of sapping some of the drama. I mean, the question of like which of the two people on the bottom are we going to like from our heights, like snip the threads of their lives? It's not that compelling.
Yeah, as we have looked at comparing the 2 seasons, as we have all season long, that I think that there were maybe some more interesting storylines here in season 42, but the big majority alliance has congealed in a way that seems a little bit more impenetrable. I do not think that will be the case for much longer, where it was a much more chaotic big alliance in season 41 with some more obvious cracks that have not yet developed here in season 42.
Yeah, in this season, they all seem to really like each other.
Yeah.
Last season, not the case.
Yeah. I do think that we are headed for some bumps in the road and the proverbial car that we talked about at Tribal Council for seemingly forever, when we got every single car metaphor imaginable. I do think that the people on the bottom, that it was, I think there's a lot to get into there. We will talk about it all. Let me just set up what we have coming up this week, because we do have a big week of podcasts coming your way. Of course, we will speak with Madam Mayor, the mayor of Ponderosa. Chanel will be on our exit interview podcast. We will talk to her on Thursday morning. Lots of questions for Chanel in an episode where she wasn't really highlighted. We ended up towards the back half of the episode, got a lot more of a spotlight on Romeo.
Yeah, not very much Chanel. Her whole strategy was, I'm going to sit back and actually I'm really curious to hear what Chanel's overall gameplay strategy was, because she had that confessional, you know,
She played
I'm
hard.
thinking of myself as playing chess while they're all playing checkers. Well, I don't feel like we saw the chess, you know, I don't feel like that was there. You know, certainly we saw a lot going on in the pre-merge with her and Dan. But I'm really curious to hear what her perception of this chess game she played was.
Okay. We'll hear from her on Thursday. I have somebody that I've been trying to track down for a very long time on a recap podcast. So I have never had a recap podcast with Angelina Keeley from
Really?
Survivor David versus Goliath. Yes.
Wow.
And so she will join me, and we will talk about what is going on here in season 42.
Great guest to talk about too when
got a rice negotiation. Yeah. So
yeah.
That's great. Really excited to catch up with Angelina. I've got Hannah Shapiro on the Feedback Show, your friend and mine. And then I also will have another podcast with a Survivor this week. I'll be catching up with Nasir, who can give us the season 41 point of view. And then I'll have Jessica Leese with me on the Survivor Academy. So jam-packed week of Survivor podcast. Make sure you're subscribed. robiswebsite.com/subscribe for all of our podcast feeds over on RHAP.
Hey, Rob, if I'm listening to the Nasir podcast and I forget who the guest is, I just need to remind myself, you know, that is Nasir.
That is Nasir. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, the decision between Chanel and Romeo, we had the squeaky wheel versus, the person who was very content to try to go with the majority. It ends up being Chanel. Was that the right call for this majority alliance?
I mean, for some reason, Mike, this was like, you know, really a vendetta of his. Yeah. And I tweeted about this, and we've talked about this in the past, how, funny I find it that Mike has this crazy vendetta because Chanel voted against him at one tribal council when he voted against her.
But he said she was good. He said she was good. He said she was good. Yeah.
Yeah. They both voted against each other. But I think I would have voted out Romeo personally. I mean, definitely the right move for Mike, who really wants her gone, right? And if someone is that under, and it's interesting because it leaves Mike and Hai as the only two members.
Two Vati went out back to back here in the last 2 weeks between Lydia and Chanel. So they are the only remaining members of the Vati tribe.
And I think that's actually probably good for them, because then they become like, if you're worried about, big, pre-merge tribal lines, you're not going to be particularly worried about Hai and Mike, right? I mean, if Chanel is someone who they don't really trust, is not particularly inclined to vote with them, but could create some sense that there's more of them as a block, getting rid of her is good for them.
I think it was a bad move for Mike. I know that Mike had a axe to grind with her, but I feel like that Chanel did not seem to have an axe to grind with Mike and with Hai. Chanel seemed like a person where if they told her a name to write down, I think she would write down that name. Is she loyal with them to the end? Like, absolutely not. And she's demonstrated that. But to get rid of her after you've already gotten rid of Lydia, like, yes, they make their numbers smaller by getting rid of her. But for Mike, it seemed like that this was a personal thing. And I think Mike has played a very good game so far to this point. But it seemed like that it felt personal that we have to get Chanel out. Where this week, it seemed like that Hai had moved on, where Hai was much more like, hey, Romeo is the person we need to worry about, which I do think that Romeo has more of a capability to pick up and gather all of those people that are at the bottom, even though they see Romeo. I hear at this point in the game, I do think that he has more connections to other players, where Chanel really had nothing going on with anybody.
Yeah, I do think we need to know, and I'm curious. I'm sure you'll ask her tomorrow. What sort of relationship she did have with Mike, because I think that we see so little of that. Would be good to know. Like, were they still in conversation? Did she believe that they were still allied? But overall, I think you're right. I think this was not a great move. I think Romeo is the better choice here. He's someone who is creating more chaos in camp, which is obviously bad if you're in the majority alliance. You don't want people stirring things up. You want people who are going to sit there and not stir things up. Romeo was someone who did have the capability to, bring in other allies. He seemed to be in conversation with a lot of those other people who were on the bottom, like Tori. You know, we saw him talking to Marianne. So I agree that Romeo would have been the better choice here. You want to get rid of the troublemakers if you're, you know, in the catbird seat.
Stephen, could you speak a little bit to this? Because I feel like that, you know, when you went back and played in Cambodia, like I feel like that we're at the point in the game where, you know, and there was like this big, like 9-person or whatever alliance, and you had all the people that were at the bottom, like the witches, after, you know, Cass had gone home. Could you talk a little bit of from the big alliance perspective of like the thought process of, okay, which person from the people on the bottom we want to get rid of?
Yeah, I mean, I always felt like you want to get rid of the ringleader. You want to like cut off as many heads as you can. You know, whoever's like making the most plans, you want to get rid. That's why we went after Cass first. She seemed to be then. I mean, Sierra was supposed to be next, and then we went after Wentworth, which didn't totally make sense. But then it also becomes a little bit. So on the one hand, like the most obvious pecking order is, you know, who are the people who are like driving the chaos? Who are the people who are creating the most cracks? But then, you know, every subgroup within that big alliance is going to have its, you know, it's kind of like jostling for power, because, you know, you want to have as many, you know, you're all in the big group, but you also kind of are thinking like, well, where is my, you know, where on the onion is my group? You know, are we on the inmost core? Are we on the outermost in outer group? So, you know, for example, with Wentworth, like one of the reasons I wanted to target her when we did vote for her was because she was more in like the Joe side of the big alliance. So I saw her as breaking down as like a number on that side of things. So I'm sure that has to be factoring into people's perceptions here, you know, where everyone else, you know, is like happy to take out Chanel. Like, you know, it's funny that High is the one offering up Romeo, and you know everybody else is like, yeah, we're good with Chanel because she's, you know, one of his numbers.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of is like a trap for these people at the bottom where, you know, their names are being thrown about. And for Romeo, you know, he hears his name going around. We heard Romeo is paranoid a bunch of different times in the episode. Drea said it. Omer said it. High said it. People seem to be really saying that Romeo all of a sudden is like a very paranoid player, but like he should be
with
like,
reason. They were saying like
with reason.
He was the decoy boot. He's like apparently going to be their boot next. He's like the next target on the list. Like
yeah, he's the next target on the list, and it's like, what? How dare he? What? He thinks he's getting voted out. Well, now he is because he's acting like he's getting voted out.
So he was going off with. Oh, can you believe him? Like going off with different people and talking to them about strategy, like the indignity.
Yeah, it's a little bit like you know, catch-22. What are you supposed to do when you're in these like bottom positions?
Right. And I do think there's an element of like it's okay for like the good people to go and you know, talk and strategize because that's what the good people do. But once you're, you know, the bad person, then whatever you do is gonna, you know, be held against you. And so it's like with these things, it's like never totally that they're doing something wrong. It's like whatever they do is going to be used as an argument for like why they have to go.
Yeah, it's not a super fun part of these games that we watch. Like it feels very much, I know you're not a Big Brother person, but it feels like very Big Brother-y, and some of the things that they've tried to like get away from on Big Brother, where it's sort of like, you know, the cool people in the house get together, they've got a big alliance, and then all of the people that are on the outs, it's like, if any of them are talking, if any of them are sort of like trying to put a group together, all right, that's the next person to go, because the bottom people aren't allowed to do these sorts of things that we do in the house. And that definitely feels like that's where Romeo is. And I also feel like that's why it was a mistake to not go after Romeo here, because I think that we're getting into this situation where looking ahead, I think that, you know, it looks like if everything holds to season 41 form, which we have no reason to believe that it won't, we have the final 10 coming up next week, where we saw Jeff in the preview that he had 2 necklaces. I believe we're going to see splits with 5-5.
Right. I agree.
And so I do think that probably does help that big majority. Like you could end up with a split where, say, like Drea, Romeo, Marianne are like all in like a group together. But, you know, I've talked with Ebby about this in the past, and they felt like that they would have had a better chance to stay at the final 10 had they not split up into those 2 groups of 5. So whatever they're going for here with splitting up the 2 groups of 5, like for whatever reason, like in this format, I feel like that it does not work great.
Well, has it like ever happened? Like, I mean, that and an actual underdog alliance has been able to take advantage of this split. Like, maybe I'm forgetting something obvious.
The one time when it like really could have borne fruit was in season 39, and I know that's a little bit of a blur for people, but that there was a point where that Missy and Elizabeth that they could have voted out Tommy. That basically it was, I believe it was Missy, Elizabeth, Tommy, Elaine, and Karishma. And then that Tommy and Elaine pulled Karishma in to get her to vote out Missy instead of voting out Tommy, who was the ultimate winner. But, had Karishma gone a different way there, like that would have been, a really big move to take out somebody from the majority alliance, like in that split. We have not really seen it happen yet.
It's just funny and interesting that this like twist that is clearly designed to shake things up always ends up basically
it helps the majority.
And it's such an interesting thing. I wonder why that is. I mean, certainly there have been some like just like crazy instances of bad luck where the majority like has 3-2 majorities in both split tribes, which is not, the fact that it always seems to happen is somewhat surprising. Mm-hmm. But I also wonder if there's some element in these things where especially in new player seasons, the people who are on the bottom are so desperate to be in the big group. They're not thinking of flipping the game on its head. They're thinking like, how do I hold on like one episode longer? So they're willing to like follow along with the majority just so long as it's not them. They're willing to like, claw up one rung higher in that big group.
Well, if you remember in season 41, then the vote after this split happened, that's when the big majority did end up cracking, and Shan ends up being voted out in the episode after they go into that split. I think that from production standpoint, I think they also look at it like, 2 chances to win immunity for the people on the bottom. So that if you're in trouble, well, now you have a 1 in 5 chance to win immunity. Okay, well, good luck to the people. If you have Jonathan on your side, or if you're going up against Tori, who is 2 for 2.
Yeah. And P.S. We'll talk about that all the Tori Jonathan immunity stuff later. But I do feel so bad for Romeo here, who really went from this fantastic position pre-merge to like for no apparent reason, being this outsider, being kind of like on the very bottom, being forced to scramble, and you see his whole personality change. And I think that really happens to you. Like when you're in a position of power, you are able to kind of be cool. You're able to sort of like, pick your positions and like decide things rationally. But when you're on the bottom and you have to scramble, then you become paranoid. You become like a different person. Like those aspects of you, maybe out of necessity, maybe out of fear, emerge. And it sucks. It's just a much less fun way to play Survivor.
Yeah, it would be a great question to ask Drea at some point, like why, when you got to the merge, did you sort of just like turn your back on Romeo? And I think that she would say like, oh, well, he got really paranoid. But it seems like that he got really paranoid because you stopped talking to him.
Well, yeah. And the objective thing is like, why not bring him? Why would Roxroy ahead of Romeo into that big group of 8 when everyone was pulling everybody else in? And you do see the Taku tribe. Is that the Lindsay, Marianne, Jonathan, Omer tribe? Taku. Like they're really good at kind of all protecting each other,
Well, I feel like that, where we talked about the 8 last week and we thought maybe, okay, Lydia out, Marianne in. It really does feel like, I thought this episode really showed that Marianne is more on the bottom than I think we even realized last week. Marianne votes for Lydia. She's one of the correct votes. I had thought that they brought her in more. It seems like, and Marianne also seems to realize that she is on the bottom. And I feel like that, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that in the next couple of weeks, we end up seeing, some sort of like a group of the people on the bottom. And unfortunately, like if they split 5-5, that's going to interrupt that, where whoever's left from Romeo, Tori, Marianne, getting together. And I think Ulmer ends up being a part of that.
You think he's like in the bottom group?
I honestly, I don't. So he's played a really great game, and we saw him tonight. I'm talking to everybody, and all the people at the bottom are telling me all of the things because they think I'm on the bottom. Well, like I think Ulmer is going to realize this sooner than later, that I think he's closer to the bottom than he might realize, even though he has played exceptionally well. We saw in the episode tonight that Mike, and Jonathan were talking final three.
Yeah, that was so interesting. And there's a real, bro down kind of sense to it. We've got a real, it's sort of like the latest Three Amigos, right? This is their kind of like a, old Malcolm X.
And so they seem to have a final three. Who's their fourth? Maybe it's Drea. Maybe it's Lindsay. We saw in the previous.
It could be Omar. I mean, Jonathan has been very loyal to Omar too. So I think I wouldn't be surprised too, though, if Omar was that
it could be, but it seems like that maybe not as much. And we saw a scene with Omar and Mike in this episode, but I'm not sure necessarily like where he fits into all that, but basically like he's a fallback for Jonathan, who has also Lindsay. We saw next week also, it looks like they're talking to Roxroy. They're talking about a guys alliance. I'm sure that that is going to go over incredibly well with everybody if that's the case. The only thing I will say is that just because they tell Roxroy, hey, let's do a guys alliance, that may not necessarily be the ultimate plan.
Yeah, it's hard to speculate about. You can't speculate about the preview, I mean, that's who knows what that is.
I mean, if they want to like get Roxroy on board with them, sure, you tell Roxroy whatever he needs to hear. If you feel like that Roxroy is going to buy, hey, guys alliance, okay, great, that's I'm on board with doing whatever they want to do. I don't have to worry about losing my numbers because we're doing guys alliance. It just may not necessarily be that case in reality. We have to wait till next week to see.
But so interesting how Omar is not having a vote really helped him, because he was not, there was
plausible deniability,
no paperwork, no paper trail, quite literally no paper trail. So he could kind of position himself as being on the bottom.
But so he has all the info, and I do think he is the person that could potentially put together like the Romeos, the Tories, the Mariannes in a way to potentially like make a move. But we'll have to see ultimately how
he's the Rob Cesternino spot, and you're kind of giving him the Rob Cesternino like big game flip move.
Yeah, I mean, that's, of course, I'm a little predisposed to look at the game through that particular lens but I think Omar is the person who, and we saw it in the episode, and it seems very clear to me to see that like if the light bulb goes off, that he's not in the best position or is not in as good of a position as he thinks he is, that he does potentially have the pieces to be able to make a big swing and go in a different direction. Yeah.
Well, so what would those numbers be? Like that would be him, Marianne, Tori, Romeo.
That's 4 out of 10. Don't forget Marianne also has her idol. Yeah. Also, Marianne also has an extra vote. And we saw, I think that Marianne is going to be the key cog in ultimately whatever they do, because we've seen Marianne's we've seen a lot of like sort of like first person storytelling from Marianne, and we know how Marianne is feeling about her position in the game. Marianne's going to be a very important part of this story.
Yeah, for sure.
So ultimately, we'll have to see how this is going to play out. I would love to talk about how we got into our advantage here tonight, where much like season 41, Jeff set it up and basically, hey, no pressure, but if we don't find the advantage tonight, I'm going to be very disappointed.
Yeah. Very funny that he's I thought that actually, I think they pared it back a little bit from last season, the Jeff's sides to the camera, and they haven't bothered me as much this season. I found them enjoyable.
They really didn't show up until last week's episode, and now it's sort of like, all right, you saw what we did last season. Okay, here we're doing it again. And so it's sort of like just resetting how we're doing these same mechanisms that we did.
But it's fun,
like 41.
For like those who are not paying attention to the advantage under the bench. Like, how would you even know there was I mean, I guess like they used to like zoom in and like there'd be like a little animation, but like kind of setting the stakes of like, I hope someone finds it. Creates tension. I was into it.
That's good. And so we had Drea, who, and I talked with Xander a couple of weeks ago about this. Like, what was the real reason why he did this? I just think it was very interesting, his thought process on that, that he felt like that he was on the bottom. It would have been a good spot to potentially work with the people who lost the challenge. That I thought that it was an interesting like flip from what you were talking about in Second Chances, about how you, like Tori said, I want to be on the team that wins the reward. That's where the game talk is going to be happening. Xander felt the antithesis of that. I want to be with the people that lose the challenge, because that's where the game talk is going to be happening. Here, seems like that Drea just doesn't like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, I was thinking like, she's looking at these two teams. On the one hand, you've got like the Jonathan team with all like the super jag dudes, and then you've got, like Romeo and Omer on your team. You're like, you know what? I don't need to expend the calories. Like, let's just sit this one out. But actually, a very close challenge in spite of that.
It ended up being very close.
Omer at the hot hands, my God.
Yeah, he choked at the end, but he was hot at one point. He could have had it. Yeah. And so, Drea sits out because she doesn't like peanut butter. Stephen, back in my day, the people would get out of the challenge so they could get peanut butter.
Get out of the challenge? Is that what they're calling it?
Sure. Yeah.
Get out of the challenge and their clothes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So give me some peanut butter. But Drea, I guess, hates peanut butter. Do they find out if anybody has a peanut allergy on Survivor? I know the kids, they can't bring it to school.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's an instant disqualification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, so Drea goes over there and sits there, and I thought, no way she's going to find it. The way she was sitting on the chair, I thought like, no way she was going to see it. And sure enough, she does.
Well, speaking of hot hands, she's got the gift for finding advantages. She now has 4 advantages. And someone tweeted at me a question: has anyone ever in the history of Survivor had 4 advantages at the same time before? I don't think so. I think
we would know.
Yeah.
If that was
I was thinking like, well, Asina had a lot going on, at one point in the season she won. What was that called? Game Changers.
Well, did she though? And she had the legacy advantage, and then she
Natalie Anderson had a lot in her like bag of tricks, but
she had the legacy advantage and the vote steal, I think. And Natalie Anderson like had the things, but she kept selling them to get fire tokens. Like she would find the things and then sell them. So I don't think that. And Tony had his bag of tricks famously. But no, I don't think anybody's ever had all of these things in the way that Drea does. And so it's a beware advantage. And so that we're like, okay, what does a post-merge beware advantage look like? And so I thought this actually ended up being very clever. Like I sort of went through, like at first I was like, this is pretty lame. Like beware advantage of like, you have to, better beware because it's at the well and you could get caught. It's like, okay, well that's very lame. Not good. And so then we end up seeing that she uncovers the coconut shell, sticks her hand in, and then her hand is covered in the red paint.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and what's great is how it pays off, which is that it's like she's able to get rid of most of it, but not this giant swath on her arm, and is called out on it by Tori.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, Stephen, first off, did Drea do a very bad job? Like, how does she not go out to the ocean after that?
I thought that was wild. You'd think that like that's like the no-brainer. Like just go, like say you've got to like pee, or you're taking an aqua dump,
Yeah.
Rinse off in the water, and then you're good.
Okay. Tori observes that she has the knowledge is power. Do you think that there ultimately are going to be repercussions? We see Tori telling Marianne about this.
The only problem with going in the ocean is like she's got this paper in her pants. So maybe she did go to the ocean and washed her hands and then just didn't get, she didn't want to fully submerge because of the paper in her pants.
Yeah.
And so had this swap. So does Tori do something with this information? Maybe but what's she gonna do? Like say like I think Drea has an advantage, which like many people know.
So here is the issue. So last season in season 41, that I know that many people were up in arms. You in particular did not love the idea of knowledge is power. That so silly. I can't lie at tribal council.
Silly.
If somebody asks me, do I have a thing? honestly, like, it kind of hurts Drea to have the knowledge is power when you already have all the advantages.
Right. Then you like right.
It's sort of like that Mike has an idol and Marianne has an idol. She could take it from them, but are there any other advantages out there for her to take from?
I mean, she knows about the two.
She's gonna take some of the amulet.
Yeah, to the amulets. I mean, the two amulets together, right?
I don't think she could take their amulet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
I don't know. I think it's the rule is like if they're voted out. So
yeah, but then she could get the throw it in the fire. One fewer amulets. It's a very funny point that like it's actually worse for her to be
she was the worst person to get this
acknowledged as someone with it.
I mean, she keeps it out of other people's hands,
right? Then she gets to keep all her candy. It's fun, but like if she like thought she was about to get voted out, she could knowledge is power Marianne and be like, give me your idol. And play it immediately.
But that's why I think it's so important that Marianne plays her idol in the near future. Like Marianne is feeling very much on the outs, where in the season 41 merge, Liana was like very much like, okay, I gotta get Xander's idol. I have an axe to grind with Xander. We'll see if Drea is gonna hold on to that or want to use it soon, because I feel like that Marianne's idol has got to be coming up soon, because that she is feeling like she is on the bottom. That being said, how big of a target does Drea become then at the point where she has what? And then after she uses knowledge is power, then she has Marianne's idol, also 2 idols, the amulet, also an extra vote, right? So like a lot of stuff where I guess what are you going to do about it when she has all of those things? But that being said, Stephen, season 41, the knowledge is power twist ended up being nullified because so many people knew about it. The players could move into defensive positions to save themselves from the knowledge is power. No one else knows about the knowledge is power. So that if Drea decides to take Marianne's idol, take Mike's idol, they will be completely blindsided because nobody else knows that knowledge is power is there. Are we feeling like that knowledge is power could end up being disastrous for season 42 of Survivor?
Yeah, like this is always the danger of knowledge is power. And I was, not thrilled with it last season because I thought it was way too powerful. And because I think it's kind of ridiculous. Like, you're not allowed to lie. It's like a silly board game rule. I said at the time. And I'll say it again. It's like a silly board game rule. But I think that risk is still there. I mean, it played out really, really well last season. It was super fun. A great scene with Xander and Evie and Liana. But like you said, it's because everybody knew about it. There was a lot of maneuvering around it, which I think made it a more fun advantage. And I think that's what we discussed at the time. It's more fun if players know what's out there so they can prepare for it. They can make strategies around it. They can think about it. That makes the game fun for the players. It makes the game fun for the viewers. When it's like some random superpower that comes out of nowhere and that can be a lightning bolt at any time to totally upend the game, that's not fun.
Yeah. Now, we did see Tori was asking Drea some tough questions about it. We've also seen that in the past, Drea has volunteered information to people.
Just about the vote, though, right? I mean,
the vote steal. Also, she brought up the vote steal also last week to people who didn't necessarily know that she had it.
Extra vote.
The extra vote. So could she potentially reveal this information to the wrong ally?
I think she's been pretty. I mean, the extra vote thing was interesting because it's like, she has this whole bag of stuff and she tells them about this the most trivial thing. She wasn't like, oh, I've got an idol. She was like, I've got an extra vote. I can help out in this situation. Now, it seemed unnecessary at the time. Maybe in some way she thinks it deflects her target if she tells them about this weak advantage she has. Man, it's crazy that there was a time when an extra vote seemed like a huge advantage. Season 30, my God. Now it's like, who doesn't have an extra vote?
Who cares?
Yeah.
And another week that the amulet is, nobody's worried about that.
Yeah. A lot of extra votes out there. Yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting. I mean, it's really fun. I feel like Drea is a very fun player to have all these things. She's very quiet about it. She's just slowly accruing power, and I hope at some point she plays all these things in a blaze of glory.
We saw the rice negotiation comeback. Steven, is this doing anything for you?
No, maybe it makes it more fun for Jeff. Is it fun for you?
Let me ask you this question. Is Jeff a good negotiator?
Well, he seems to tell them where, they were going up to 5, 6, he easily could have gotten 6 out of that group.
Mm-hmm.
They were jumping head over, he easily could have gotten 5. 5 would have been a no brainer. I mean, 6, he probably could have gotten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we saw where then Marianne really turned on the waterworks to try to get Omer to be the 4th person. This didn't sit great with me, and tell me if you think I'm reading too much into it. Just the idea of after it was over, the idea of hey, when Jonathan says, hey, look, I made sure that the people who sat out of the challenge, that I made sure that these people are not going home tonight.
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
Hey, what are you, the king of the tribe?
He just said he was not going to vote for them. He said, I made sure they knew I was not voting for them tonight.
Yeah, it just seems like that, he even after he did I'll make it up to you, that you set out of this tribe. It just makes it felt okay, a little bit he's the president of the whole tribe, and they're
Jeff was asking, was there any talk about not voting for the people who sat out? Jonathan was like, yeah, I talked about not voting for the people who sat. Why are you such an anti-Jonathan?
I'm not anti-Jonathan. I'm if I was on Survivor, I'd say oh, good, these people sat out. Great, this is a great night to vote these people out.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's the weird there's such weird.
Also, can I tell you something that I honestly full disclosure, I'm Jonathan eats the most. I guess he gets the fish, but he eats the most rice.
So if you had to eliminate someone for food related reasons, you would get rid of Jonathan.
Yeah.
I don't know. He does get the fish.
He does get the fish. So it's a complicated equation.
Yeah. Well, interesting about Jonathan though, maybe the most physical player that the show's ever had. Not the best Survivor Challenge competitor the show's ever had.
Well, the challenges do not play to Jonathan's strength. And it actually might help him at this point in time. You
know where I stand on that. The idea that a big, extremely athletic person losing, a balance challenge is never going to be. People are oh, you should throw these challenges. No, they're still going to think of you as a giant physical beast.
Yeah, but I think that if he has 0 wins, I think that now all of a sudden, take a look at where we're at right now. Tori won 2. I think people are oh, we gotta take the shot on Tori now if she's not vulnerable. I think that it sort of does help diminish his. I mean, he came in 2nd, but I think it does help lower his threat profile. The fact that he hasn't won any individual immunities.
But I just want to say that I think Joe Anglem, is probably the better if we're doing a competition, which we're not
sure
the better Survivor Challenge competitor, because he is
no doubt if you were drafting people to be in the team challenges, Jonathan would be the number 1 pick overall. But if you were drafting people to win individual immunities, I'm not sure Jonathan would be one of the first 5 or 6 picks off the board.
Yeah, well, for sure. But it's just Joe, I think in terms of streaks of immunity wins, both team and individual, has to be up there among the best ever.
Sure. But was not as dominant in the team part of the game, in the team part of the game as Jonathan was.
Yeah, that's for sure. Anyway, Tori, right in there, winning immunities. So fun that, again, the fly in the ointment, still, winning immunity challenges.
Yeah, I have to say, it is fun to have this character in the season.
Yeah.
No, I know not everybody's cup of tea, but it is fun to have a person who is stirring the pot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very fun.
Steven, anything else on your mind about this episode?
I feel like there's actually a lot. So what happened? We still don't find out, as Gordon Holmes noted on Twitter, why on earth Roxroy voted for Lindsay.
Might have to wait for a Roxroy exit interview.
Did you ask Lydia?
I mean, I don't think. How would she know?
I don't know. I mean, wasn't there some questions you were supposed to ask Lydia?
I did. Did you not listen to my exit interviews?
I did, but I listened. Yeah.
You know, a question like that, you know, it's hard to like put the exit interview person on the spot, because if she does know, it's
Right.
like
It's
probably
how do you
from,
know?
if
from,
she does know, it's like, at Ponderosa, he told me like blah, 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 blah.
You don't wanna know
So,
that.
you know, I try not to ask.
information.
I try not to ask like a leading question that gets them to spoil something.
Yeah. What's interesting? Where's your Survivor power rankings, Rob?
Of like when you say power rankings, if
Who's gonna win?
Okay. I mean, power rankings are probably a little bit arbitrary and reductive, but I would say that just looking at the board for this week, you know, again, I feel like that Omer is somebody I'm really keeping an eye on right now. Although I think if I was going to be doing power rankings for the week, I feel like that, you know, Drea is in a really good spot. She has all of the advantages, but is she being left out of that group? And honestly, that I know you said that I'm a Jonathan hater. Like I kind of feel like that. You know, Jonathan could be the person, and it was Omer who was talking about options in the episode, but I kind of feel like that Jonathan might be the person in the game that has the most options.
That's an interesting point. That's a very interesting point. I think you're right, because Jonathan obviously has the whole, you know, his original group.
Taku,
and then he's got his, you know, his bro thing with Mike and Hai.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So he definitely has a few different ways he can go. I think his name, he was not even talked about in this episode as being a person to go home.
That's crazy. They have to be talking about him. That's crazy.
Well, I think that's what Chanel is implying when she's talking about, hey, like I'm playing checkers. Like I'm saying, let's get out Jonathan, but nobody else is thinking that way.
Well, I do wonder if, you know, maybe there's like a Xander element to Jonathan where everyone thinks, you know, he's not going to win the game. Like he's his physical beast, but why? Like he's, you know, he's super dominant in challenges. He's, you know, seems to have a really great social and strategic position.
Yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily the same thing. I think that, you know, people looked at Xander as like a young person who was maybe not necessarily like a serious person. And I think that they thought that maybe he might be like insincere. You know, that based on like they felt like, is this guy for real? Come on. And I think that was part of the reason why they didn't take Xander as seriously as a winner contender, but I don't think that's how people are looking at Jonathan.
Oh, we didn't talk about Mike, first of all, and all of Mike's wonderful social connections, but also specifically that lovely moment between Mike and Omer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, you know, Mike, he seems to genuinely love people.
Yeah. Well, so interesting. I was just reading, I think it was Mike Bloom's
they vote for him. Yeah.
Interview with Mike from before the season, and Mike Bloom asked Mike, I don't know Mike's last name, who he associated with most from past seasons, and he said Ty. You know, a very interesting choice. You know, someone who loved people, someone who was warm. So I thought that was a very interesting choice, because you know, I can see a lot of that kindness and genuineness that Ty brought to the game in Mike.
Stephen, let's get to some questions from the listeners of Rob is a Podcast. I got a bunch for you here tonight. Okay. All right, here we go. Let's start with Chi-Chi from Toronto. The 30s were all about voting blocks and people not staying in big dominant alliances. Has Survivor been on air long enough to revert to big alliances dominating?
I mean, I think big alliances make a lot more sense than voting blocks, you know, in terms of like you're creating a long-term, I know associated with the phrase voting blocks, but I never thought it was a good idea. I think alliances make a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm. I think that the 3-tribe format, I think, has something to do with that. I'm not sure necessarily if this is like how the game is going to be. Like, you know, eventually people are going to play in season 43 and 44, and it remains to be seen whether or not they will do 3 tribes again in the same sort of idea of like 3 tribes and then ultimately coming in. But I think that in this 3-tribe game, I think for whatever reason, these tribes have not met each other. It's a little bit like the game is starting over again. And now you have a tribe of 12 people, and and a group of 12 people is going to end up going to a big group and a small and people on the outs.
Yeah. Yeah, right. No, I think that's right. It's just not
Yeah.
like, and you predicted this. You were like the people on the top of all these tribes could come together, and there's going to be one person on the bottom of all these tribes, and they're going to be in trouble. And that's basically exactly what happened.
Okay, Stephen, let's take a question from a Christian Hubicki has a question.
Oh my God, I know him.
Yes.
What happens? Christian Hubicki wants to know what happens if Drea.
That's what you were asking.
An amulet. Does that increase the amulet's power? Christian and I were so in sync. Does that increase the amulet's power, or would it need to be voted out to be put out of play? Could she destroy it after stealing it? I was speculating the exact same thing. I think she could throw it in the fire.
Yeah, I would say again. I think that this is like one of those questions where that if she would have to go to a producer, they're like, "Hey, can I do this?" And they're like,
"Yeah,
"We'll cool. Get back to you. Hold on, let us." So I would think that if you held 2 of the amulets in the game, I think that it would be the same as if she steals Lindsay's amulet. I think that would be the same as Lindsay being voted out of the game.
So, but then would High's amulet also have that power? I don't know.
It would not have the knowledge
I think Lindsay wouldn't be voted out of the like.
I think that you think that that she could use her 2. No, I think it would be. I would be like basically like I would imagine if you stole an amulet from the game, it's basically not like, okay, now there are 2 people holding amulets. I think that would then be a vote steal.
Well, but Drea's 2 would be a vote steal, but High's 1 would still be an extra vote.
No, because that's not how it works. Like if I
don't know.
Because hear me out. Because High and Lindsay can't say, "Hey, let's use our 2 amulets for a vote steal," and then we'll steal a vote from Drea without her knowing about it. Like that. That's not how it works now. But
so I think she would have to destroy an amulet.
I don't know how you destroy an amulet.
It's like a Horcrux. You got to stab it with. I don't know how I don't remember how you destroy Horcrux. Whatever you do.
By the way,
Dragon Glass?
Yes. I don't know. Congratulations to Christian Hubicki, who was spotlighted as the Consumer Cellular Player of the Week.
Yeah, that was great. Great moment.
Yeah. Great podcast with Christian last week on Rob Is a Podcast. In case you missed it, check that one out. All right. John Eric says, why do players seem to take it personally when another player is justifiably being paranoid about getting the boot? Is this a comfortable in the big alliance thing?
I think that's right. I also think like when the person, like I've always sort of thought of it as like this like sacrificial like sensibility, like everyone is playing, everyone is scheming, but it makes the people in the big alliance like feel good to say like that person is scheming. That is the like, the bearer of all of our sins. This is the bad one who's adding chaos to the tribe, who's running around with different people, who's lying to us, we who never lie. And then they like load that person up with like the tribe's sins and vote them out, and things are pure again until like there's a need to find someone else to vote out.
And it's almost, I think, this idea where, the big alliance like thinks they're up here, and it's like, oh, we had mercy on you. We didn't make you the person, but now you're acting like you're the person. Now that's it. You have to go. You have to go.
And it's the same thing with Chanel. Like, oh, she's
you
a snake.
Ungrateful jerk.
Yeah.
We weren't voting you out tonight. Now we are.
Yeah. Rob, I have a question. Okay, we'll go to Tubby Lunchbox. Tubby Lunchbox wants to know, Mike's confessional about his social game got me thinking, is he the best social player this season? And who would you say has the best strategic game so far?
Okay. So I wonder, the social game, Mike has been very good.
Mike's up there.
I do wonder if it's Omer maybe playing the best social game. High has been, very strategic in this season.
Yeah, really fun. Some really great cast. Some very good, solid players. It's like cool that there is such a range of people playing really like good games. It's very fun. And Romeo, I mean, obviously not the best social strategic player right now, but
Romeo's kind of cratered the last couple of weeks for me.
Yeah, but he was doing a great job previously.
Yeah. If Romeo could Romeo get his feet under him again in this game? Is that possible?
Yeah. I really believe that your survivor temperament is so situational. I mean, I remember very well being on the bottom of my tribe and like running around like a lunatic. And then as soon as the tribe swapped and I was like on the top, I was a cool strategist, like puppet mastering my way. And I think the reverse has happened to Romeo, and I think it could flip again.
Yeah. I wonder maybe could Romeo potentially like work some magic in the smaller group maybe next week where, like potentially getting like if he's with a Marianne and Tori, like, okay, flip and vote out, somebody who is a more powerful player in a group of 5, if that's what they end up doing. So we'll see if that they're able to like if we are having like just like a different change of scenery from that big group, which is like so imposing right now.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of confessionals about how strategic Marianne is, and there's been a lot of focus on her as a strategic player. And I think you're right. Something
Manipulating with emotions this week. Okay.
Cerise non-vote out wants to know how long until we get advantage get in and all these well-known advantages get burned. Will it be all at once?
So, we have a lot of advantages, but Drea holds a lot of them. That could they, with the knowledge is power. I think that reduces the chance of an advantage get in, especially if Drea ends up stealing a idol from Marianne or Mike. Like, what is Drea going to play all of her advantages?
I mean, she may just do the knowledge is power and then immediately play the idol.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do.
So I don't think we're going to end up with a knowledge is power, or I'm sorry, with an advantage get in situation in this season. I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Okay. I do think that we could see potentially the extra votes get played in the 5-person group next week.
Oh, that's fun.
Okay, we'll see. It happened last season with Ricard
to
and
no
Shan.
effect, right? Yeah.
No, well, they ended up doing a vote split, I think, to make sure in case Nasir played his idol. Okay. Shay says, after securing a much needed immunity, should Tori have gone harder on pushing for Drea? Even though Tori voted correctly, I think that she will feel that she will need immunity next week too.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think like when you have immunity, like that's when you want to try to make a big swing. I mean, it seems that probably would have gotten very little traction. I mean, Romeo still seems to have some allegiance to Drea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I thought Tori actually played the week very well. She asked Drea the questions, but she was not. Again, she won immunity, but she voted with the numbers this week. I mean, she did what she needed to do to stay close to the big group, especially at a time where any questioning of the big group, as she also was the one that kind of got Romeo spinning, where she was the one that gave Romeo the piece of information that Roxroy had said that he was one of the names, which sort of sent Romeo spiraling. And if Romeo goes out of the game before Tori does, I think that you have to give Tori credit for that one.
Yeah, that's interesting. As someone who you think that she kind of set him up into, you think that was deliberate, her setting him up, or do you think that was? I mean,
I don't think she said. I think that was her way of. So she was trying to stir the pot and get something going, but in doing so, it ended up so I guess maybe it was sort of inadvertently. I don't think that was her 9-step plan to get Romeo voted out before her.
Because I feel like Tori, has this horrible reputation as this big problem but it doesn't actually do that much. That's that detrimental. We don't see her scheming that much. I don't even think she schemed that much pre-merge. I think that compared to what other people were doing in that tribe, I felt like Drea was proposing bigger moves, and certainly Swati was proposing bigger moves than Tori was. I feel like somehow she got this bad and undeserved label as being. I mean, maybe I'm misremembering. So what am I not remembering that she did? That
I think that overall, I think that she gives off vibes that people feel like that she's not trustworthy, and because they feel like that she's not trustworthy, I feel like that they are keeping secrets from her. I think Tori senses people are keeping secrets from me, so she asks very prying questions to Roxroy, to Drea about what's going on, and because she asks, a bunch of questions, then they find it's sort of like a cycle of that. That
Roxroy scene was very annoying. If I were Roxroy, I would have been very annoyed at that.
But you must have done something there. Yeah. He doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Let it go.
But she's going to keep, trying to find find the opening. And I think that's ultimately why they don't feel so great about her. But we'll see. We'll see. She has not done anything that has been, beyond the pale or anything like that.
Rob, I had a question, which is when Jeff was making such a big deal about these being sandwiches from home.
He always does that about peanut butter and jelly. I don't know, like
I thought there was gonna
again,
be letters
like,
or something.
No. He's like, all right, you're gonna get. Say it was the same thing last season. It's you're gonna get something that's gonna bring you back home. It's PB and J. Like
I guess he maybe like that's like
that maybe this is like part of the story of like, you know, his first day at school in Seattle. He didn't know anybody, but mom packed his lunch and it was PB and J. Like, oh,
Seattle?
just like.
Is he from Kansas?
Did you watch the show last week?
Oh yeah. That's what you're talking about. The move.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his first day at school in the new school, opened it up. Oh, it's PB and J and chips, just like back at the old school.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. He always talks about PB and J as being a taste of home.
Wow, so interesting. I really thought there was going to be like notes.
No,
letters from home.
Jeff is.
What are the luxury objects?
Luxury items? Yeah.
That would have been nice.
That would have been nice, but no. Just PB and J. Okay. All right. Miri says, considering Omer name dropped Sir Rob as his inspiration preseason, would the know-it-alls consider his gameplay pre and post merge? Did any similarities to the fluidity of Rob's Amazon game? Well, Steven, you touched on this earlier. Look, like,
what do you think?
I don't remember exactly what he said. I mean, I don't want to like you know, like I don't like being that guy to be like me about things, but I think it's like it's good.
We all like it, Rob. Just admit it.
Can't admit it, Steven.
Well, we like it when, you know, if someone says like, "Oh, I modeled my game on yours," like
but I think, but look, if it doesn't work, then I'm going to look like an idiot. Yeah.
I modeled my game on yours and it didn't work. So no, I think that idea is very apt. That he, you know, the idea of like being a part of the big group, but then having individual relationships with all the outliers. That's certainly something, I mean, maybe you invented. Like, I don't think that was, I can't think of anyone who was doing that before you. I don't know. Yeah. And I mean, I think he's doing a really good job. He's right in the middle of the big alliance. I mean, the only thing we're not seeing, as you mentioned, is that he's not in those kind of like conversations with Mike, with Roxroy.
And I think it's hard because I don't know if you necessarily, and maybe it's a flaw in the strategy of like the closer you are to, you know, making the people on the bottom feel like you are also in with them, the more you are a little bit more isolated from the real nucleus of the power at the top.
Yeah. And it's hard too. Like, it was easier on like a 16-person season, right? When the tribes were just smaller than when you have this like giant 12-person tribe. You know, there's also just an element of like, you can't be everywhere all at once. There's an airtime element, right? They're showing a lot of Omer doing stuff. Maybe they just need to show this conversation with these 3 people to show that they're there too. So, you know, in Token Sheens, when it was, you know, I don't know, 9-person merge tribe, you know, 8 people by the, you know, as soon as we got one person out, 7 people after that, you know, it's a lot easier to like have individual relationships with everybody. But when there's just like a ton of people on the beach and like everyone is talking to everybody, it becomes very, you know, tough.
Okay. Let's see what does Mary Horn have to say?
Mary Horn wants to know, how do you guys think the Roxroy Mike Jonathan big guy alliance will go? Feels like something we haven't seen. Feels like we haven't seen something quite like it in a while.
Okay. Again, let's see if it ultimately is real. There's no way that Mike and Jonathan, I think, are dumping high for Roxroy. If anything, you know, Roxroy, Mike seemed very much like, hey, we need to get Roxroy on. I don't want to like rock the boat, and was using that as his excuse of why they couldn't change the vote off of Chanel, because we already told Roxroy that the vote was going to be Chanel, and we don't want to lose Roxroy's trust. But let's just put the pieces together. What's the move they could be making if they are going to? Is the move that they're going to like, hey, let's bring in Roxroy to do what? Vote out Marianne?
Or vote out Drea? Like, if you're making, so if there's idea of like, we're going to do an all guys alliance or a guys alliance, and we're going to do anything big, then who is the woman, presumably, that they are going to be targeting? in that case that's not already being targeted, right?
But do you think that
Tori's
Roxroy would go with
Marianne's
that?
already targeted.
And Drea had been working with those guys. Like
I don't know either. Like it's so hard to speculate about this kind of thing because we don't even know,
I almost feel like
know what's happening.
That Drea, like I feel like if they went to Drea and said, hey, the alliance is like hi, Jonathan, Mike, Roxroy, and you, I think she might love that.
Yeah. I just but who else would that even be against? Because the only women in that big group, it's Drea, Lindsay, that's it, right?
Tori.
Well, no, in the big group, in the big alliance.
Oh, yeah.
So if they're doing some guys thing within that big thing, and it doesn't seem like it's against Lindsay. There's literally nobody else who it could be other than Drea. I don't totally buy it either because I think it doesn't make sense. Drea wants that's they've got a good thing going. But have we seen that one? We saw Dominic and Wendell. Obviously, there was just two guys, not
but it wasn't. I mean, they were with Laurel. Laurel was their third the whole way through. So yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the last time that there was a all guys alliance that tried to run the table. I think it has been years and years since we had that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Stephen. Let's take a question from Chris F. Do you think the show is missing out with the random rock draws? If they do a schoolyard pick for dividing teams, it shows who may be aligned and the odd one out gets an advantage. Instead, the game is random. I had been thinking about this last week with the dig out the giant boulder of should they do a draft as opposed to just pick out the teams were somewhat even minus Jonathan this season. Season 41, the teams were very lopsided for doing this challenge. Again, this competition ended up being pretty close. I think what the show is trying to do with the randomness is to sort of reject the idea of that the show is unfair or favors players who are, physically fit.
Well, it also might be just to create unusual groupings in the winning or losing groups. The typically Survivor challenges are a draw, right? Are a draft. And as a result, they're often typically the same teams. Whoever happens to draw the rock for team captain is variable. But then after that, the picks are pretty consistent. You pick. So you end up getting very similar groupings together a lot.
Okay. All right, Stephen, anything else about this week's episode of Survivor Final 11?
I miss when the tribes themselves were the beginning of Gabon, when the actual tribe was an individual draft. That was so fun. I wish they did that again.
I think the Gabon might have ruined it.
And they did that again in Gabon.
They did it. They did it where it's you didn't do a good job drafting. Why don't we order the tribes from here's what the draft order should be? Okay, what should you pick? Well, the person that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, and they still wouldn't do it right.
I mean, Palau is same. Palau was an interesting one too, because that was a really fun one, right? Where you have all of the
not for
young,
Wanda
fit people. Yeah, it's true. Or Jonathan. Libby.
Yes. His last name.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to specify which Jonathan, not this Jonathan. It's fine for Jonathan.
Yes. Okay. All right. So, Stephen, let me tell you about what else is coming up here this week on RHAP as a podcast.
Please do.
Of course, lots of great stuff coming your way. Angelina interview on Thursday, in addition to talking to Chanel about everything. We got to ask Chanel about Shipwheel Island.
Yeah.
Got to find out what was going on there. Got to ask Chanel about casting that vote on Mike when she thought Daniel was going to play the shot in the dark. So
you got to get her perspective on the big blow up tribal council. I'm so excited to hear her thoughts about that. We heard Daniel's when you interviewed him, which I did listen to.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that should be a fun with Chanel. Okay. We're going to get your questions in for Angelina.
Mhm.
We've got a feedback show coming up with Hannah Shapiro, robbinswebsite.com/voicemail. Hannah loves to get your voicemails as well. Always a fun one. And then I'll catch up with Nasir over the weekend. So very much looking forward to hearing what Nasir has to say about season 42. And then I'll talk with Jessica Leese about what can future players learn from this week's episode of Survivor on Survivor Academy for patrons only. robbinswebsite.com/patron. Plus a ton of great stuff coming your way in our Survivor podcast feed. Chappelle is back on the B&B. That is always going to be a fun time when Chappelle joins Mike and Liana. This week that we have Jacques from Survivor South Africa joining Shannon. Of course, he's a great Survivor fan of all the different survivors from around the world. Frail Mary is going to be on the Survivor Stock Watch with Taryn. Plus Purple Pants podcast, Bryson Wendell again, breaking it down in the Survivor News edition of the Purple Pants podcast, all in our Survivor podcast feed. Plus David and Jessica on Why Blank Lost. All right.
Wow. What a lineup.
Of course. All right. Stephen, the other day I had the pleasure of talking to Harvey. He is a professor at McMaster University, where Marianne from this season of Survivor is an alumnus. He is teaching a class called Surviving Survivor. We talked about what goes on in a Survivor class, all about the game of Survivor. That's up in our Survivor podcast feed.
Wow, it's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, other past professors of Survivor classes have gone on to be hosts of Survivor podcasts.
Yes, we talked about the differences between what he's doing and what Max Dawson had done in his class. Check that out in our Survivor podcast feed. It's a brand new season of 90 Day Fiance. Puya Zambakili is back with Liana Boris to kick off coverage of a brand new season of 90 Day Fiance in our 90 Day Fiance podcast feed. Looking forward to checking that one out. Plus, we also have over on Patreon. Check out everything we have going on with very easy for you to watch Big Brother Canada down to the home stretch. Heard it was an epic episode of Big Brother Canada tonight. Survivor Academy, and of course everything going on in our patron Facebook and Discord and the patron 5for5 with the First Lady of Podcasting. That's all at robbinswebsite.com/patron. Okay. robbinswebsite.com/subscribe as well for everything we have going on with Rob as a podcast. We also have a brand new podcast to tell you about. Stephen, I know you are always looking for ways to keep up with everything going on in the world of pop culture and celebrity gossip.
True.
Yeah. You're always like, I can't keep up. How do I do it?
It's true.
We have a brand new podcast called Mess Magnets. Kirsten McInnes, Sasha Joseph are breaking down everything going on in the world of celebrity culture, all the gossip, everything going on. That's great. Can subscribe and hear that podcast when you go to robbinswebsite.com/mess feed. All right, Stephen, what's coming up for you this week?
Okay, I got a problem, Rob. My child, 1.5 years old, used to love the bath. Now, yes, absolutely throws a fit when like total wailing, like, you know, writhing when we need to give her a bath.
Okay.
And I don't know what to do. It's like totally new, like last week, a couple weeks. And then if anyone's had, you know, tips on what to do, like how to like get a kid to you know, stop hating the bath. Do you have tips? Do you have like bath issues?
All of my bath tip issues are for like putting the dog in the bath.
Well, what do you give me? Yeah,
the dog tries to escape.
Yeah, our daughter's trying to escape.
Yeah.
What's the secret?
Yeah.
How to get the dog to bathe?
Yeah, I don't know that. Let Stephen Fishbach know on social media at Stephen Fishbach. Also, Stephen, who's got the fishy this week?
I think I got to give it to Mike, right? I mean, Mike wanted something done.
Was it the right move?
Well, I don't think it was necessarily the wrong move. He wanted this done, and he got it done, and he leveraged his social connections to get it done in a really strategic way. I don't think it was I agree it wasn't a great move, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad move. If Mike is not working with Chanel anyway, I don't know. I mean, it's tough. I mean, you're right, because like then it's like someone who would work with him, but he has some relationship with.
It's like
he
he had
doesn't
he had
trust
a
her.
personal vendetta with her and got her to go, but I don't think she was necessarily like gunning for him.
But if you don't trust someone, I don't know. I mean, it's a tweener. It really is a tweener. Who, if not Mike, who?
Okay,
Omar?
let me throw some names. Omer, this wasn't necessarily his move, but I think it definitely although he didn't trust Chanel, but Chanel I think was probably one of the bottom people that would have worked with him. Like that could have been a number for him. Unfortunately, all of the bottom people are numbers for Omer. Could Tori potentially Fishy?
I guess you mean because of the Romeo stuff?
This is the Romeo stuff, and ultimately she won immunity.
That's not really a factor.
Yeah, it's a hard week for the Fishy.
I'm going to give it to Mike because he had the social connections, and I thought the way he leveraged them was very artful. Ultimately, I think it really is a tweener. I don't think it's necessarily bad, and I do think that having fewer people from that tribe in the game is ultimately good for him and High. I think that like the benefit of Mike's fraught relationship with Chanel might be outweighed by, you know, the benefit of them just being a very small twosome when you have these two other big groups who maybe will now see each other more as rivals. You know, I mean, like typically, like maybe this was like an intentional Mott Singh, you know, like they're like big, like a post-merge Mott Singh, where they're like removing their own members to appear meeker.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Mott Singh could be a very innovative strategy.
Very innovative. All right. Thank you all so much for watching us. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.